Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great lineup for you all today. Brianna Joy Gray joins us to discuss Jen Psaki's latest comments on the crisis at the border. Intrita Parsi weighs in on the House Democrats' decision to remove the $1 billion provision for Israel's Iron Dome from their funding bill amid pushback from progressives. Plus, Team Rising is here to discuss attempts to avoid another government shutdown and suspend the debt limit.
But first, according to new evidence in the book The Bidens by Politico reporter Ben Schreckinger, two major emails previously reported as misinformation by major tech platforms have been confirmed as genuine. The first, a 2015 email from Ukrainian businessman Vadim Posharsky, thanking Hunter Biden for, quote, giving an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together, unquote. A second email is from 2017, reportedly outlines a deal between the Biden family and a now defunct Chinese energy company. That email, sent by Biden business partner James Gillar, includes the line, this famous, infamous line, 10 held by H for the big guy, which allegedly referred to Hunter holding a 10% stake in the deal for Joe Biden, although President Biden has insisted that he was never involved in his son's business dealings. He has insisted that, Alyssa, though the evidence is pretty clear that he was in and around the business dealings. There's nothing that has his name, obviously, on any contracts, but you do have what was that? Bobolinsky?
Yes, Tony Bobolinsky.
Tony Bobolinsky. You have Bobolinsky's story of meeting Biden and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden at the hotel in California, which is backed up by text messages and emails that certainly provide an enormous amount of circumstantial confirmation that meeting would have occurred. And then you have now these emails being shown to be authentic, which indirectly implicate Biden in these business dealings.
Right. And listen, there's nothing new in politics about family members profiteering off of their family members being in office. But what is unique about this situation, and by the way, Hunter Biden was on payroll of a Ukrainian energy firm for something like $30,000 a month when the man has no background in commodities, energy trading, any of the above.
And not just that, a lot of that stretch overlapped with these epic benders that he was going on.
Correct.
That involved time on Skid Row and elsewhere, which, hey, no shame. The guy had substance abuse issues, but he was cashing paychecks from this natural gas company the entire time. So clearly he wasn't delivering much expertise in those particular moments.
Well, his father was the sitting vice president. So what's unique about this story, though, is that the big tech overlords at Twitter decided they would actually not let the public see this reporting. When the New York Post came out and said, we have evidence of these emails existing, we have this laptop, and other outlets more or less refused to cover it. Eventually, the Wall Street Journal did. I'll give credit to Mike Bender, who delicately kind of parsed what he found from the laptop and covered it. But it just once again shows that the media decides what the public deserves to know and tries to make those decisions for them. And I mean, there's more on the Hunter stuff. And I'll say this: when I was advising the Trump campaign, I said, don't make Hunter Biden a focal point. I don't think it's that compelling in the sense that we know family members of politicians often are corrupt and they often profiteer off of their family's access. It's nothing.
Was it a little awkward to say that? Like, who was in the room while you're like?
Certainly
not
Trump
naming any names
members
here, but there are circumstances where children used the last name of their father.
It did not seem to me to be the most compelling argument we can make. But further, I did actually think for most Americans, I have family members, friends who've dealt with substance abuse, and I think Hunter's somebody who's had a very troubled past. But that doesn't mean it's not important. There is blatant corruption here, and one thing that still is not really reported on by the mainstream media is the fact that Hunter Biden took a massive loan from the former mayor of Moscow. Like, as much as there was this Russian hysteria around President Trump, it looks like, pay for play with bad oligarchs is, kind of party neutral, and people on both sides have apparently done it.
So journalist Drew Holden took Twitter on a trip down memory lane when the story first broke during Biden's campaign. CNN had brought on James Clapper to call the now confirmed scoop textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft. Plus, Brian Stelter had a segment about how it was obviously fake. Holden also pointed to a CNN business reporter who called the story dubious at the time. NPR had a disclaimer on why they wouldn't report the story about Hunter, saying that, quote, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. MSNBC jumped on the bandwagon and had Congressman Raja on to dub the story a, quote, Russian influence operation, while Joy Reid called it a Russian hatchet job. Their senior producer also said it appeared to contain disinformation, distinct from misinformation. And even Politico played their own part in discrediting the story they now confirmed to be true, running a story that claimed more than 50 former intel types disputed the findings as, you guessed it, a Russian information operation. Now, 50 intel operatives did, in fact. So, 50 intel operatives did, in fact, say that it was a Russian disinformation operation. And also, what we need to understand, and it's difficult in this environment where the camps are so radically split apart, to believe that two things can be true. And we don't know yet. But I for one believe that all of the evidence indicates that it was Russia that obtained Podesta's emails and then leaked them and blew up the 2016 campaign through that narrative. That doesn't mean that any of them were untrue or not newsworthy. I reported on them. I don't regret reporting on them. The U.S. media should report on them, regardless of what the source is. The only thing that matters is, are they true? Can they be confirmed? And are they newsworthy? Are they relevant to the public? So, did Russia have something to do with Hunter's laptop? We don't know. We don't know enough to say yes or no. But what happened at the time is that people just said Russia, 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 to then sweep the whole thing away. And that is unfair.
Correct. And it's a fact, and this is an issue I worked on when I was at the Department of Defense. It is a fact that part of Russia's long-term strategy against the U.S. is to pit the political parties against each other, to further polarize us and create distrust.
It shouldn't be controversial to say that. That's a reality of the world that we live in.
Correct. And it's been going on for decades, but of course the rise of social media.
And we do it too.
We do it as well.
That's often a response, which to me isn't really, yeah, we do. We coup governments, we pit people against each other, we drone people. Okay, what does that have to do with anything?
Well, and the rise of social media, I think, has it's actually made it much easier for foreign governments and bad actors to try to influence our domestic politics. But to your point, that doesn't mean the information they're weaponizing against us isn't real. And for the media to have no level of, to just dismiss it outright because maybe the Russians want us to see it, that's not doing good journalism.
Yeah, and there was such hypocrisy from big tech when they said, why are you censoring this material? I said, well, it's hacked material. But what, hacked material? Since when is hacked material something that can't be published? The Sony leak was a hack. That was, and we understand that with North Korea because they were angry about some movie. But there was really interesting stuff in the Sony material. All the news outlets ran with stuff on that. The DNC, the information, just because it's hacked doesn't mean.
Right. I mean, as a technical matter, I wonder if this laptop was not originally given to Rudy Giuliani and instead given to somebody who's seen more credibly in the mainstream, that maybe the story would have been covered differently, because of course that has,
absolutely.
It seems highly political when it's in the hands of Rudy, who obviously, leans in favor of President Trump. But
really poorly rolled out.
It's a poor rollout of the stolen laptop. But just remarkable that it took until now. And I'm like, is the New York Post going to get an apology over this, because they were dragged and censored for weeks on end for daring to publish it in the first place.
Right, they weren't allowed to tweet for.
Their account was locked and they weren't able to share the information.
Locked for months. I don't know if it's even open yet. They definitely deserve one, and I think that they could probably sue.
I think they certainly would have grounds for it. But I think it raises the question, so what other stories are out there that big tech and some in the mainstream media have just decided the American public does not deserve to know about? Because we have to imagine there's more. And I would say, this should give us a dose of skepticism when we look at the Brian Stelters, who nice enough guy or whatever of the world, who decide we're going to be the arbiters of what is fact, what is fiction, and what you deserve to be seeing in your coverage. And I think that's also why, other sort of media outlets are the ones that are starting to rise up and get more traction now, because people just are not trusting these legacy media operations that seem to be putting their finger on the scale of whether it's politically, whether it's just inherent bias, or it's whatever it may be about what you should see covered.
Yeah, and it kind of struck me at the time as an overreaction to the complaints that people filed against the media in 2016 for overhyping Hillary's emails. There was a lot of soul searching that went on inside the media. Are we responsible for Trump. And so I think they overcorrected when they had a next.
I think that's a very good point. And, at the time when BuzzFeed decided to publish the infamous dossier, I was of the mindset they should give all the caveats necessary, but there's no reason the public shouldn't know, hey, by the way, this has been floating around Senate offices, around newsrooms. We don't totally know its origins. We don't know if it's real, but here's the information. Make a determination for yourself. I think more information to the public is better, not less.
Yeah, and we'll leave it there. And up next, we'll tell you what's on our radars.